All right, today's lesson is equation of circles. So we've talked about a bunch of things in circles, but there is an algebra component to that. So before we get into this, we need to review just a few things of some basic math that we're going to be applying to some of the problems in equations of circles. So if we had to simplify 7 squared, we know that's going to be 7 times 7, which is going to be 49. Okay. All right, if we take the square root of 6 squared, well, 6 squared is 36. The square root of that will be 6. If we come over here, if we want to take the square root of 4 and square it, that's going to give you the square root of 4 times the square root of 4, which is going to be the square root of 16, and that will give you the answer of 4. So anytime you square a square root, what ends up happening, right? What ends up happening when we square a square root? It ends up just giving you the number itself, and we're going to see that come into some examples that we do in homework and some of the practice problems. All right, so we're going to kind of develop the equation of the circle. I'm not just going to give it to you right away, so we're going to kind of work through some things. So if we had graph paper and we graphed it, this is the center of the circle, and we can see that the radius is 3 units long here. So the center, the coordinates of the center are going to be 0, 0, and the radius is 3 units. Okay. All right, over here, the center is going to be -2 and 3, and the radius is going to be 4 units. We can just kind of count the graph spaces. All right, over here, the center is 2, -1, and the radius will be 2 units. So how does that relate? So down here, we for this problem, we have the equation that goes with the center and with the radius, right? And what we find out is that we have this value of 9 here, right? If we come over here, we have -2, 3 as our center. If we look down here, we have a +2 and a +3. So what ends up happening, and then we have a radius of 4, which gives you a value of 16. So how do we go from 4 to 16 and then 3 to 9 over here? What do we end up doing is we squared it. So what we're going to find out is the equation, this part of the equation, is going to be the radius squared. So if we take that concept, if we square that, we get a value of 4. All right, if we look at the coordinates, this one won't make sense initially, but it will in a minute. So let's take a look at this. We have -2 and 3. So what happens? How do we go from -2 to +2 in the equation? We did the opposite of it. How do we go from 3 to -3? We do the opposite of it. So that's what we end up doing. We take the opposite of the values of the coordinates and plug it in here, and we square the radius. And that will give us our equation, which we'll get into in a minute. So let's use the same concept here. We're going to go opposite of this, which gives you -2. Opposite of that gives you +1. And then we have our equation. All right, so the standard form of an equation of a circle is this. This is what you're going to see in textbooks. So what the heck is this h and k? Well, first thing we noticed is we have minus signs, and that in our class usually means the opposite. So it's going to be the opposite of h, the opposite of k. So if we look over at our picture, what is h and k? That's going to be the center coordinates of the circle. So really this is an x value and a y value, but we don't want to confuse it with the x and y value of the circle. So there's really 3 parts to this equation, right? We have the center, which is represented by h and k, and whatever the center is, we're going to do opposite of it in our equation. We have the radius. Somehow we have to figure out what that is, right? And when we know that, what do we do to the radius? We square it. And the last part is a point of the circle. So anywhere on the circle can be a point, and whatever that point is going to be x, y. So for most of the problems, we're going to enter values in for h and k and r, not necessary for x and y. But we can also get values for x and y to figure out some other things. So keep that in mind as we go through some examples. All right. So for this problem here, what is the center? Right? So what do we do? This is going to be the x value, y value. So we're going to switch the values. So we get x minus 5, right, squared plus y plus 2 squared, and that equals to the radius squared. So that would be your equation of that circle. If we come over here, what are we going to do with the 3 and 5? We're going to go opposite it. So it'd be x minus 3 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals to 6 squared. So just taking opposite of the center and then square the radius. That's the general idea. Now we get into a couple with the square roots, which is what we talked about earlier in the lesson. So here, what do we do with the center point? We do opposite. So we get x plus 2 squared plus y plus 1 squared. And then that is going to equal to the square root of 5 squared. And earlier we said if we square a square root, what happens? is that the square root and the square disappear, and we're left with just the value of the number. All right, come over here, the center is 0, 0. So what that means is it's really x plus 0 squared plus y plus 0 squared is equal to the square root of 10 squared. Well, what happens with all those zeros is they disappear. So we're left with x squared plus y squared is equal to, now the square root of 10 squared is going to be just 10. And so now we have these basic problems of how to take the values and get it into equation form. And we're going to look at some other examples here in a second and see how we do that. Okay, so again, just to talk about the three parts of the equations, we have the center, which is going to be hk of the equation, the radius, and then we have the point, which would be the xy value. All right. Okay, so we have the standard equation again for the circle, and we need to find the length of the radius. So now here's the center. This is going to be hk, and this is going to be the points. So what we're going to do is this. The point value is going to go first, and then we're going to go opposite the center value, and we're going to square it, right? Because if we look at our equation, here's the point and here's the center, right? So we take the point and we do opposite of the center point. Then we're going to add the 6 plus, because that's opposite of that, and that will equal to radius squared. And so then we go through and we work our order of operations, right? And then we get 4 squared plus 9 squared equals radius squared. 16 plus 81, we get 97. And then the last step is we get the square root of 97. And we'll keep our answer like this. So that becomes the radius of this problem, which if we did this, this is almost going to be a value of 10. It'll be like 9.8 or 9.9 on the calculator. All right, let's take let's look at part B here. Okay, so the center point and the point. So the point is going to go first, and then we're going to go opposite the center. The point will go first, and then we go opposite the center. Right? So we set up our equation this way. So we end up with a negative 6 squared plus negative 2 squared equals to r squared. So we have 36 plus 4. So the square root of 40 is going to equal to r. Now down here they want you to write the original equation using h and k and r. So what we're going to end up having is something like this. They want you to rewrite it without the h and k in there. So we have x minus 1 squared plus y plus 3 squared is equal to the square root of 97 squared, like so. Right over here, this one would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared is equal to the square root of 40 squared. Okay? So that would be your answers to those problems based on what they want you to solve for. All right, so now we have a graph here. We're going to figure this out. So what is the center? If we look up here based on the equation, the center, remember we have to do opposite. So the center will be 2, and if there's no value there, that's going to tell us the center is 0. So our center value goes here. And if we look here, 25 is equal to the radius squared. So what does the radius equal to? It's going to equal to the square root of that, which is 5. So what we do in this problem is we go 5 each way, up, down, left, and right, from the center point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we go up and down 5. Okay, and from here now we can kind of freehand our circle. You know, it will look something like that. And we're going to try our best to draw the best circle we can using those 4 points. All right, if we look at example B, all right, the center is going to be opposite of that, so that'll be -1, and then opposite of -2, which is 2. So we come over here and we have our center. And again, this is the radius squared. So how do we get the radius? We have to square root it. Okay, so from the center point, we go 3 in each direction. Right, we have our 4 points, and now we can draw our right? And so you see the different types of problems you have using equations of circles.